Welcome back to Food Forward, Nourishing the World. I'm your host, Alan Weiner. Today, we're diving deep into the world of innovative food solutions with our esteemed guest, Colleen Zammer, Vice President of Varietal Solutions Growth and Corporate Innovation at Bay State Milling. With a rich history spanning over a century, Bay State Milling is at the forefront of redefining flour with their latest high fiber, low carb offering. So let's uncover the story behind this groundbreaking product. Welcome, Colleen. How are you?
I'm well, Alan. Thank you.
So, my first question is, who made the muffins that you served at the expo last week or 2 weeks ago?
My colleague Kelsey Harper made those muffins, and everybody raved about them.
Great. So, you made them on site, or did you make them back in your hotel room and ran them over to the convention center?
We actually made them in our innovation center in Quincy, Massachusetts, and I hand carried them to the show.
Oh, amazing. So tell us about this new product. The company has such a long-standing history in the milling industry. How do you balance tradition with the need for innovation in the dynamic food landscape?
That's a great question. Bay State Milling has been in the flour business for 125 years, coming up on 125 actually. And we've always considered ourselves innovators, but innovation differs over the decades. And we've seen a decline in flour or flour-based food consumption over the last several decades. And a lot of this is due to declining human health and people shunning carbohydrate-based foods because of obesity and diabetes. And so, as a company who wants to continue growing, we had to look to innovate and find ways to make a healthier wheat flour to keep the business growing.
So tell me more about this high fiber, low carb flour. You say in your information that 95% of people have a low fiber diet. So what inspired the creation, and how does it differ from other flours in terms of nutritional benefits and its applications?
Sure. Well, we as Americans in particular eat about 130 pounds of wheat flour a year. That is way more than anything else we eat, more than any other cereal crop, more than any other meat item. For example, corn is only about 30 pounds per year, and wheat is 130. So we looked at that as a great opportunity to have an impact on human health. And so if we can replace the flour that these wheat foods are made out of with something that's healthier, we can really make an impact on public health. And so the flour that is HealthSense high fiber wheat flour, it really just has a different starch composition. So if you think about a wheat kernel from which flour is made, it really comes from the inside of that kernel, which is all starch. And a normal wheat kernel is a highly digestible starch. So it really turns into sugar pretty quickly. And that's what causes blood sugar spikes. It's what causes weight gain. And we need to make that starch less digestible. So we worked with partners around the world to identify varieties of wheat that had lower levels of that readily digestible starch and much higher levels of what is called resistant starch. So it resists digestion, doesn't break down into sugar. It travels to your lower intestine system where it can be then digested by the good bacteria in your gut. And when that happens, that means you're not getting any blood sugar spikes and you're creating all kinds of positive compounds that are good for your gut lining, good for nutrient absorption. So it really flips the story of wheat and makes it a better for you wheat, better for you foods, low glycemic, high prebiotic fiber. So it's all about that starch component of the wheat kernel.
So you mentioned glycemic index. So I'm a type 1 diabetic. You don't need to tell me about the glycemic index, but can you explain to our listeners the importance of the glycemic index?
Yes, so the glycemic index is it's a measurement of the response to carbohydrates in a food product. So it's the way your metabolism responds to the amount of sugar that's in that product, or actually the amount of carbohydrate, I shouldn't say sugar. So if you have a lower glycemic index food, you are less likely to have a high glycemic response or have higher blood sugar or spikes from eating that food. And so if you are someone who's sensitive to blood sugar spikes or carbohydrates, you want a food that has a lower glycemic index.
So you mentioned the company's innovation center, and I'm really curious about that. Tell me how the innovation center works and how does it lead to finding new things like your new flour?
Well, our innovation center does a variety of things. We work on, we're constantly looking out in the ecosystem, if you will, to see what new technologies are available. We use technology to process things in a different way to make them more functional or more nutritious. And we look for partners to work with things like this on, because this was really about looking for new varietals, new crops. And that's not necessarily something that we 100% focus on as a miller, but we look outside to see who's going to bring us these new ideas or who can help us capitalize on them. And that's what happened with this particular product.
So when an idea comes into the innovation center, what is the process that it goes through before you proclaim it ready to the market?
Well, ideally, we start with what's the market opportunity. We need to make sure that there's a consumer out there and a customer, because we're B2B, where this is going to add value. So certainly this, with high fiber wheat, the opportunity was clear. There's a lot of wheat consumed. There's a lot of health issues that could be improved through a better wheat. So once we understand the market opportunity, we look to what is the technology or the process or the crop that we need to deliver that. And in this case, there was a global partnership who were already working on identifying these varietals. So they had their own commercialization process of making sure that they could grow these varietals and have this particular trait of high fiber be expressed time and time again. When we became the commercial partner for North America, we were literally handed a bag of seeds of this unique varietal, and we handpicked growers to grow this for us in specific parts of the country where it would thrive. And we've been working for years to develop the supply chain, make sure that we have a very pure crop, that it gets from the field to the elevators, to our mills, and ultimately to our customers in exactly the format that they require. They've got the same amount of fiber every time. They've got the same amount of functionality and performance every time. And that's something that we continue to monitor for every lot of flour that we mill.
So sustainability is a big buzzword right now. How does your company ensure that innovative flour is sourced sustainably?
Well, that's a great question. It really comes down to the growers that we work with. And that's why we hand selected the growers that we chose to partner with on this. Different growers have different agricultural practices, and we wanted to make sure that the ones we were working with were choosing the best practices for how they manage their farms. And that might be the on-farm technology they use to plant and to harvest. It might be the inputs that they put into their soil to help grow the crops. So it's all of those things in the wheat supply chain that we pay attention to make sure that when we're bringing an innovation to market, that it also has that sustainability factor.
So you mentioned that the company is primarily a B2B company. So when you're working with partners, how do you control the usage at their end? So if you take a product that is really powerful on the glycemic index and it's used in conjunction with other things that are not so good for diabetics and other people in weight control, how do you kind of make that work?
Also an excellent question. And this is also where our innovation center comes into play and our research and development team. So we work really closely with all of our customers when developing new products, particularly with HealthSense flour, just for that reason. We first meet with the customer to understand what is their goal, what are they trying to accomplish, and sometimes it might be a fiber claim, sometimes it might be a low glycemic index, Sometimes it might be digestive health benefits. So it's really important that we understand the goal first, and then we can help them formulate accordingly. And we have a lot of experience with the other ingredients that have to accompany flour to make a finished food. So we can work closely with their R&D teams to recommend what ingredients complement HealthSense flour, how much of it you need to use to achieve those claims. That's a really important piece, and why it's important to understand what they're trying to achieve right from the get-go. So we collaborate really closely to understand the goals and provide them with expertise to support not only the flour, but the finished food goals as well.
Interesting. So when you have an innovation center, it's probably really hungry for new ideas. So can you kind of give us a vision into the sorts of things that we're likely to see from Bay State Milling in the near future?
Absolutely. Yes, very hungry for new ideas. And at Bay State, you mentioned my role is varietal solutions growth. And so we see lots of opportunities for new ingredients, new products that are the result of unique varieties of common crops. And so those varieties may have differentiation for nutrition, they may have differentiation for functionality. And functionality is just a cool word for, how they make a food either taste good or have the right texture that you want. And all of those things are important. Nutrition is super important, but it's not going to matter if the product doesn't taste good or, emulate something that you love to eat. So we look to varietals to contribute all of those points of differentiation, which for us is the future of clean eating and a cleaner food system. Because if we can express all of those things through the unique crop varieties, we don't need all the additives that the food industry is using today. So I'll give you one example of something that is in market today that sort of builds on what we're doing in high fiber wheat. This is actually a high protein oat, and we call it So Naked Oats because it's a naked oat. It doesn't have a hull when it grows, and that's partially the reason of why it has 40% more protein than a traditional oat. So it's a different macronutrient that serves a different purpose, and it's also in a gluten-free supply chain. So our So Naked Oats are purity protocol gluten-free. So we're able to offer another nutrient-dense offering for a completely different consumer base, the gluten-free consumer.
Interesting. Now, I noticed that in addition to your B2B business, that you are offering consumers samples of your new high fiber flour. Tell people how they can get a hold of one.
We actually have a consumer product called Flourish Flour. It's Flourish Flour, fiber from the farm, and they can find that on Amazon. And so that's a product that they can use for home baking. We've got lots of recipes on the Flourish website, and it really gives the consumer an opportunity to try this flour on their own, see how well it works in their recipes. And so after they've used that, because Flourish is a blended flour that's powered by HealthSense, which is our B2B brand, once they've used Flourish and they experience how well HealthSense high fiber flour powers a bakery item, they can then find products that our customers are manufacturing and actually are putting our logo on their product. So Flourish is the flour that the consumer can work with, and then they can look for products that are powered by HealthSense on the grocery store shelves.
That is a great idea and some very clever marketing. I'd like to thank our guest, Colleen Zammer, Vice President of Varietal Solutions Growth and Corporate Innovation at Bay State Milling. You must have a very large business card. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back after these messages.